Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this symposium, Achieving Land Management Goals Using High-Quality Information on the Ground with BLM AIM. This symposium is going to be a great overview of how people are using AIM data and really empowering land managers through the use of AIM data, not just within BLM, but at other agencies and in other applications. So we're really excited about the suite of presenters that we have today. So we're going to kick off with Emily Kachergis, the terrestrial AIM lead at the BLM National Operations Center, to do an introduction to AIM and get the symposium started.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thanks to all of you and to our speakers for being here. I do feel like you're going to see throughout today that we have reached a point where we're starting to see real empowerment through applied science, through application of the AIM strategy. However, I'll also submit to y'all in the audience that we're not there yet completely, and there's more work to be done. And so if y'all have ideas or thoughts on how we can continue to overcome some of these challenges, we really appreciate any thoughts or feedback or ideas that y'all have in that vein. With that, I'm just going to provide a quick overview of the AIM strategy so that all of our speakers don't have to. So I'm going to start at the beginning, a brief history of rangeland monitoring. So when we started monitoring rangelands, we were especially focused on production, right? We were especially focused on the predominant land use, which was livestock grazing, and maximizing the benefits of livestock grazing or the profits from that. So monitoring then was very specifically designed around livestock grazing impacts and around kind of maximizing how we change management in order to maximize that productivity. Well, things have changed over time, and increasingly people, the public, are expecting quite a broader and broader variety of values and uses out of the public lands. And so, according to the BLM mission, we need to support all of these different people in achieving all of these benefits from public lands. And we're happy to do that. However, unfortunately, all of these uses are not always, mutually beneficial or mutually compatible. So that, unfortunately, is just a challenge that we face. And having a consistent monitoring approach, or rather having an inconsistent monitoring approach that's targeted to each one of these uses, which is the way that BLM monitoring has been in the past, is just not good at helping us understand the trade-offs and manage for those multiple uses. So that's really partially where AIM came from. In 2004, the Office of Management and Budget reviewed the monitoring activities on BLM lands, or basically the ways that BLM spends money on monitoring, and found that we collect a lot of information related to all these different uses and in these different programs, yet we had insufficient data to determine the effectiveness of our monitoring or of our management actions above just that, the level of the individual project. So the Office of Management and Budget directed BLM to analyze our monitoring activities and develop a cohesive monitoring strategy. That really kicked off a series of kind of hard conversations and kind of soul searching within the agency, 7 years of it. So there were many interviews, there was a survey, all trying to focus on kind of what are we currently doing, what's working well, what's not working well within the BLM. And there were also multiple committees kind of coming up with, synthesizing this information and coming up with recommendations. And all of that culminated in 2011 with the Assessment, Inventory, and Monitoring, or AIM strategy, this document shown right here. This was a national strategy designed to promote integrated cross-program resource inventory, assessment, and monitoring at multiple scales of management, and also to collect consistent, comparable, and quantitative monitoring data to understand renewable resource conditions and trends. So really this was a way of kind of modernizing BLM monitoring to better meet the multiple uses and values that the public expects from rangelands through our management action. Now I'm just there's tons of different policies related to monitoring in BLM, and I'm not gonna go into all of them, but just to highlight a couple of the ways that AIM kind of fits into BLM policies. The first big one is FLTMA, or the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, which is the BLM Organic Act. Right up front in FLTMA, I actually encourage anyone to download and read FLTMA. It's not that long, and especially if you work for BLM, I think it can be quite instructive. But right up front, Section 201, one of the first bullet points is that the BLM shall conduct a periodic and systematic inventory of the public lands. And so, you know, that's required. The primary kind of management process that's described in FLTMA is that land use will be projected through coordinating land use planning, and that will have goals and objectives based on multiple use and sustained yield, with the goal of preventing undue and unnecessary degradation. So basically, FLTMA, in addition to kind of this broad monitoring requirement, FLTMA says that we should do more or less adaptive management at the land use plan scale through our land use planning process. In addition, at smaller scales, sometimes the allotment, sometimes the watershed, you know, at various smaller scales, there's also the rangeland health regulations. And so these are basically 4 goals that all BLM lands are supposed to meet. And individual states can add on additional and have added on additional goals through kind of a public stakeholder input process, but these are the 4 that apply across all BLM lands. And that for many of our management activities, especially grazing, we have to determine whether these goals are or aren't achieved. And if they're not achieved, we have to make changes in management. So the 4 land health fundamentals are, broadly speaking, watershed function, water quality, species and habitat, and ecological processes. And AIM really fits in and cross-cuts all of those different goals, such that you could use the terrestrial and aquatic core indicators as a set to evaluate whether all of these land health fundamentals were being achieved.
There was a WebEx setting.
So the AIM strategy, in terms of what does it mean on the ground, or kind of what is implemented on the ground, there's really these 5 principles that guide actual actions on the ground when it comes to the AIM strategy. So the first principle is to collect quantitative core indicators using consistent methodologies. That's so that we can compare data collected in different places and over time well. The second one is to use statistically valid sampling frameworks when appropriate, and that just helps you combine and reuse data for new purposes and also generate statistical estimates across areas, across large areas. The third one is to integrate remote sensing technologies in order to obtain spatially explicit resource information, and we've seen some great examples here at SRM of folks who are doing this. The fourth is to use good data management, basically to have plans and processes in place to increase data quality, availability, and usability. And then the last one is just structured implementation. So let's be thoughtful about our monitoring. Make sure it's tied to our goals and our objectives, the things we need to know on the landscape, and that we're thoughtful from year to year and over the long term about getting that information rather than, oh crap, it's May, we have to, collect some monitoring, where should we go this year? So there's a number of documents, and I'm not gonna talk in too much depth about them, but just in case you want to look at them, the terrestrial core indicators and methods are described in BLM Tech Note 440. And then the actual methods are, or the protocol is in the Monitoring Manual for Grassland and Shrubland and Savanna Ecosystems. And then the aquatic kind of framework and core indicators and methods are in this Tech Reference 1735-2. And both of these sets of core indicators and methods were identified using an interagency process that included, surveying land managers as well as other monitoring programs to find which indicators were most relevant and which methods were most frequently used by other folks in order to design a monitoring program that could be consistent and compatible with other agencies as well. In addition, there's kind of an ongoing process on developing lentic core indicators and methods, and you'll hear more about that in this symposium. Just to introduce these, and you'll hear more about them in all the different talks today, but the core terrestrial indicators and methods are as follows. Bare ground, vegetation composition, plants of management concern, and non-native invasive species are all collected using the line point intercept method. Vegetation height is collected using a direct measurement in a little cylinder. Canopy gaps are collected from a direct measurement along a line. And then soil aggregate stability is a little measurement using a stability kit. In addition to these core indicators for terrestrial and aquatic both, we collect a number of site covariates. So, for terrestrial, think ESD type information. For aquatic, think, slope and valley type and stuff like that, that help provide context and set meaningful objectives for these different locations. And then the aquatic indicators fall into kind of three main buckets. They include the physical, biological, and chemical aspects of river and stream systems, as well as some covariates that help explain and set benchmarks. So those include flood-prone width, bankable width, and slope. And again, you can look at this document to hear about them. You'll hear more about some of them in this symposium, and then you can look at this document to see more details. The applications of the BLM AIM strategy, well, at this point, there's too many to list, but suffice it to say that at this point, this is a large effort at multiple levels within the agency, from national to land use planning areas down to monitoring the effectiveness of individual treatments. And that's really kind of runs the gamut of what you'll hear today. But in terms of amount of data so far, there's been about 18,000 terrestrial points collected and 1,400 aquatic points collected. I just wanted to highlight briefly that, you know, all of this data doesn't kind of arise out of thin air. So in addition, there's a bit of a support structure or a set of tools that have been developed to support all of this work within BLM. And a lot of that occurs through the National Operations Center where I work, and many of the folks organizing the symposium work, as well as through kind of our partners, with a lot of support from our partners in state offices and field offices, as well as at the USDA ARS Hornada and the National Aquatic Monitoring Center. So those tools broadly are collected at aim.landscapetoolbox.org, so go there if you want to see more information. But just to highlight a few kind of categories of tools, we've got data management tools, including electronic data capture, centralized storage in databases, and protocols for ensuring data quality, and you'll hear more about that this afternoon. And then training is a huge component of what we do as well, and you can find out more about that on the website as well. So with that, I just want to conclude by saying that I'm really excited to see in these presentations all of the different ways that we are achieving empowerment through applied science. And I really do mean this not only for BLM staff, you know, who are making decisions on the land, not just that they feel empowered, but I think through increased consistency as well, and kind of transparency that comes with that, as well as through the increased availability of monitoring data and other kind of derived data products from AIM, that people that are users of public lands as well can feel empowered through applied science to achieve better outcomes and kind of the things that they want to achieve on public lands. So with that, I will close and take any questions. Any questions, maybe? Go ahead. Yeah, so the terrestrial one is BLM Tech Note 440, and then the methods are the monitoring manual for grassland, shrubland, and savanna ecosystems. And then the aquatic one, I believe, is technical reference 1735-2.
Yeah, -1 and -2.
Go ahead.
In your introduction, you said that we can imply that monitoring in the past has been oriented for the maximizing production of profit from livestock. And that is not correct. That monitoring is done to ensure that we can run livestock without degrading the resource, and it is done properly managed the resource for that. And I think perhaps introduction like that. I'm sure the permittees would be very surprised to find out that BLM's monitoring is aimed at increasing their profits.
And I appreciate that clarification. The clarification was just made that I probably oversimplified the history of rangeland monitoring to focus too much on the production aspect, because there were land health aspects as well to that. Great point. Go ahead.
Is the AIM data available to the public?
It is. And that's with a slight asterisk. So the terrestrial data up through 2016, I believe, is available to the public, with the intention of making the rest of it available. It's just more of a kind of balancing workload type of thing that it's not yet. So. Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you, Emily.